All right, so today we're diving into some pretty big changes happening right now in the AI world, specifically how we're all approaching AI safety standards. And things are, well, they're getting complicated fast.
Yeah, you're not wrong. The landscape is definitely shifting. We're seeing this move away from, those really rigid content restrictions that we used to see, and it feels like things are headed towards a much more open approach. It's definitely creating some interesting ripples.
It feels like a real turning point, right? OpenAI, the folks who made 챗GPT, well, they made a pretty big announcement on February 12th, prioritizing diverse viewpoints and trying to reduce censorship in their AI models.
And that announcement, well, action followed pretty quickly. They got rid of that, what a lot of users called the orange warning box. That was the thing that prevented ChatGPT from answering certain types of questions, the ones they thought could be, harmful.
It's a pretty bold move. I got to admit, I'm kind of curious about why they did it. What do you think is driving this whole change?
Well, one big thing is just how fast AI technology is moving. Like we're seeing huge leaps in things like reasoning, and there are way fewer of those, what we call hallucinations, where AI makes up stuff or gives you totally wrong information. So some folks are saying that as AI gets smarter, all those tight restrictions, they just aren't as necessary anymore.
That makes sense. So the better AI gets at understanding and using information, the less people are worried about it. Well, going off the rails.
Yeah, potentially. Plus, there's this growing idea that restricting what information AI can use could actually slow down how it learns and evolves. Some experts think AI needs to be exposed to tons of data, even, maybe even some controversial stuff, all to get really good at reasoning.
So it's like a trade-off then. More freedom means faster learning, but it also means more risk, right?
Exactly. Figuring out how to balance all that is, well, it's basically the core of the whole debate about AI safety. And it's worth pointing out that OpenAI doing this seems to line up with what the new U.S. administration thinks about AI, how it should be regulated. President Trump has always been really into open discussion, and he's for a much lighter touch when it comes to keeping an eye on AI.
And his VP, J.D. Vance, well, he made some headlines when he wouldn't sign that joint declaration about regulating AI at that big summit in Paris. He said a lot about being against what he calls too much AI censorship.
Yeah, he's basically saying that too many rules could stifle innovation, that we should trust developers to build safe and ethical AI.
Well, it looks like we've got two very different approaches here. The U.S. seems to be all for a hands-off approach, but other places, like the EU, are going for much stricter rules.
That's right. And that difference, well, it could have a huge impact on what the whole global AI landscape looks like. I mean, think about it. The U.S. taking the stance, it might lead other countries to do the same, and we could end up with a way more open, much less regulated AI environment around the world.
And what about competition? ChatGPT is already the biggest chatbot out there, something like 350 million users. Could OpenAI relaxing things put pressure on other companies to do the same?
Oh, it's definitely possible. Other chatbot developers, like Naver and Kakao over in Korea, they're getting ready to release their own consumer chatbots, and they might feel like they have to loosen up their restrictions to stay competitive. Users are used to ChatGPT's being able to talk about pretty much anything, so a chatbot with more limits might not be that appealing.
That's a really interesting point. So this isn't just about, like, philosophical differences in how we approach AI safety. There's actual economic stuff, real competition pushing things along.
Oh, absolutely. And those forces could be what ends up shaping how AI develops and, well, how it becomes part of our lives in the next few years.
It feels like we're right on the edge of some really big changes in AI. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, I think we need to look a little closer at what could happen if we move toward this less restricted AI, the potential consequences. We'll do that after a quick break. So we've talked about how this shift toward a less restricted AI could mean faster development and how competition is playing a role. But I think we really need to look at the possible risks here. What are people saying about the problems with this more open approach?
Well, I think one of the biggest worries is misinformation, and harmful content. Like, if AI is allowed to just go out and grab information from all over the internet, there's a real chance it could be exposed to some bad stuff, like biases, conspiracy theories, even just plain lies. And then what happens if it starts, spreading that stuff around?
And the thing is, AI is becoming how a lot of people get their information. So if it starts showing us all the bad stuff on the internet, that could really change how people understand the world.
Right, exactly. And then there's the problem of, what if someone with bad intentions gets a hold of this less restricted AI? Imagine if he used it to make really convincing fake news or propaganda. That could cause a lot of damage, manipulate people, really hurt society.
It sounds like we're walking a really fine line here. We want AI to be powerful and smart, but we also have to be super careful about what it learns from and how it's used.
Yeah, it's a tough balance for sure. And there isn't one easy answer. Some experts are saying the best thing to do is try to build better safety measures right into the AI systems themselves, like mechanisms that can spot and filter out harmful content even while the AI is looking at all kinds of different data.
So instead of just limiting what the AI can see, we're trying to make it smarter, more able to tell what's good and bad.
Exactly. It's like we're trying to teach the AI to think critically about the information it sees and to resist being tricked or manipulated. One way to do that could be to train the AI on huge data sets that are specifically designed to help it recognize and get rid of anything that's harmful or misleading.
That makes sense, but wouldn't that be really, really hard to develop? Like, how do you even teach a machine to understand all the complicated parts of human language and ethics?
Oh, it's definitely a challenge, no doubt about it. But we are seeing some big steps forward in this area, especially with techniques like reinforcement learning. That's where the AI learns by trying things out, making mistakes, and getting rewarded when it makes good ethical decisions.
So it's kind of like raising a kid, teaching them right from wrong, helping them develop a good moral compass.
Yeah, in a way, that's a good analogy. We're basically trying to give AI a sense of responsibility, make it understand that its actions have consequences.
And how does that connect back to OpenAI's decision to relax its content restrictions? Are they just hoping that these improvements in AI safety will take care of any problems?
Well, it seems like that's their thinking. They're basically saying that the benefits of a less restricted approach, AI learning faster and getting better, those benefits outweigh the potential risks, especially as these safety mechanisms get better.
It's a bit of a gamble, isn't it? But it's also them putting their faith in the future of AI. They seem to believe that we can make AI systems that are both powerful and responsible.
And it's a gamble that could affect the whole world. The choices that companies like OpenAI are making right now, well, they're going to shape how AI is developed everywhere, not just in the US.
This brings us back to Korea. Naver and Kakao, they're kind of in a tough spot. They're about to launch into a market where everyone's already used to ChatGPT and how open it is. If their chatbots are seen as too restricted, people might not want to use them.
Oh, totally. They have a real dilemma on their hands. Do they follow OpenAI's lead and risk getting some backlash? Or do they play it safe and risk losing out to the competition?
It'll be really interesting to see what they decide to do. But thinking beyond Korea, this brings up a bigger question. Will we see everyone around the world moving towards a more open approach to AI?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? Will the U.S. approach become the model for everyone, or will different places keep their own specific standards? We could end up with a really divided AI landscape.
And what do you think would happen in each of those scenarios? What would a unified global approach to AI safety look like compared to a more fragmented approach?
Well, a unified approach would definitely have some advantages. Think about it. It would make it easier for AI developers around the world to collaborate and share knowledge. And it would simplify all the regulations, which would make it easier for companies to do business in different countries. There are also concerns, about cultural differences. What if one set of values ends up being pushed on everyone around the world?
So maybe a one-size-fits-all approach isn't the best idea. What about the fragmented scenario? What would be the good and bad things about that?
Well, if things are more fragmented, you get more regional diversity. Different places can set up their AI regulations and safety standards based on their own values and concerns. But then you run into issues with things not being consistent and things getting really complicated. It could be hard to develop and use AI systems that work well across different countries.
Seems like there are valid points on both sides. And the stakes are incredibly high. This isn't just about technical stuff. We're talking about how AI will interact with our societies and cultures, the very fabric of how we live.
Exactly. And this conversation needs to be happening everywhere, globally. We need to hear from all sorts of different people representing different perspectives and values.
You're right. This can't just be a conversation between tech companies and governments. Everyday people, policymakers, ethicists, everyone needs to be involved.
Absolutely. The future of AI is too important to be left in the hands of just a few.
Well said. All right. So before we wrap things up, I want to bring this back to the individual listener. We talked about a lot of complex stuff today, but what does this all mean for you, the person using AI in your everyday life? I mean, as AI becomes a bigger part of our lives, like the apps we use, the information we see, we're all going to have to deal with what these changing safety standards actually mean.
Right, yeah. It's not just some theoretical debate anymore. It's going to have a real impact on our daily lives. Think about it. How do you use AI right now? Maybe for research, learning new stuff, or even just for fun. As AI becomes less restricted, the information it gives you, how it interacts with you, all that could change a lot.
It's almost like we're stepping into a whole new version of the internet, where it's getting harder to tell what's made by humans and what's made by AI. And as we figure out how to navigate this new world, We really got to get better at critical thinking. You know, we need to be able to question the information we see, figure out if it's believable, and then form our own opinions based on, actual facts.
That's such an important point. Just blindly trusting anything, whether it's a person or an AI, can be really risky. We have to be active, engaged with the information we're getting, not just passively taking it all in.
So how can we actually do that? How can we, as individuals, get better at this whole critical thinking thing, especially with AI everywhere? What advice would you give to our listeners?
Well, one really practical tip is to always think about the source, like who or what is giving you this information? What's their agenda? Are they known for being accurate and unbiased? These are questions we should be asking about everything, especially as more and more stuff is being made by AI.
It's almost like being a detective, right? Like you're looking for clues to see how reliable the information is. And another part of that is checking to see if other sources are saying the same thing. Don't just depend on one source, especially if it's AI. See if you can find the same information from trustworthy sources that are, actual people.
That's a really smart approach. And don't be afraid to actually question the AI itself. Ask it where it got its information, how it came to its conclusions, if it has any biases. A good AI system should be able to show you, at least a little bit, how it makes decisions.
So we need to be interacting with AI in a way that's more critical and engaged. We can't just accept whatever it tells us as the truth. It's almost like we need to become more, AI literate. We need to understand how it works, its strengths and its weaknesses.
Absolutely. And that kind of understanding is going to be so important as AI gets more and more woven into our lives. We need to know how it functions, how it learns, and how people might try to manipulate it.
This has been such a great conversation. We've covered a ton of ground today, from OpenAI's new approach to what it might mean for AI around the world. But as we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with one final thought.
Yeah. We've talked a lot about the technical and social challenges of AI safety, but in the end, the way we shape the future of AI really comes down to our values. What kind of world do we want to live in? What role do we want AI to have?
Those are questions we all need to think about, and it's a conversation we all need to be part of. So to our listeners, we want to ask you, what are your hopes and worries about AI in the future? How do you think we can get that balance right between safety and innovation? Let us know what you think. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep diving deep.